Smarter Markets is back at the FIA's Boca 50, and we're sitting down with Alan Guarino, Vice Chairman at Korn Ferry. Great to have you with us, Alan.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
And I've been starting off all these conversations with a similar question for folks, which is, how long have you been coming to Boca? As it's been 50 years. We've had no one who's been here for 50 years yet. I think maybe 20 is pushing it. But how long have you been coming to the conference?
Actually, I probably know a couple guys that have been here for 50. They may not be here this year, but they're out there still. I think I've been coming to Boca since 2009 or 10, so 13 or 14 years. Yeah.
And what brings you back?
Every year. It's actually the only conference I go to. In my industry, I could probably go to a conference a week. But to be honest, Boca is the epicenter of financial markets leaders who come together every year from around the world. So it's hugely efficient. It's run incredibly well. It's content rich. And I get the opportunity to meet people that would take me an entire year to travel the world to meet with if I had to go the old-fashioned way.
And I wanted to get into the people part with you because a lot of the guests that we have on are either, providing technologies to markets or they're focused on new products. You're focused on the people. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about your practice at Korn Ferry.
Sure. So, at Korn Ferry, we're 11,000 people in 60 countries, and that covers the whole world of jobs from middle-level management all the way to top executive CEOs. And that's not just recruitment, but nearly $1 billion of our revenue is leadership development and advisory. So think about things like top team effectiveness and so on, coaching, assessment, you name it. And so with that, if you're an exchange platform, if you're a large fintech, there's probably nothing on the talent supply chain that you'll need that Korn Ferry doesn't have, except for the tech itself. So if you want HRIS technology, you can buy that from people that we partner with. But if you need content and intellectual property that helps you drive a more powerful human resources function, that's the stuff that we do. And recruiting obviously is a big part of it, but it's not by any means all that we do.
And I'm curious, have you seen the demands placed on executives or the demands for certain types of skill sets changing over the years?
The answer is yes, for sure. I started in this business in the mid to late 90s in terms of markets. And I tell people there were two people on a phone trading stocks, and they were charging 6 cents a share per side of the trade, right? Fast forward with some regulatory changes and some technology enhancements, and 90% or more now of all stock trades happen without human intervention, right? They're matched electronically. So with that, a lot changed. I clearly, this work fits inside Korn Ferry's fintech practice. There's a reason that stock exchanges, major clearing platforms, and certainly all the technology businesses that support markets sit in our fintech practice, because exchanges are actually tech companies. They happen to do things that have financial instruments involved, but they are technology companies. And so years ago, when we would do recruiting, we might think about taking people from major investment banks and getting them to join an exchange. Just like now with the major investment banks, we're thinking about people coming from big tech companies to come and take top leadership jobs at exchanges and at the big banks, as opposed to looking to cross-pollinate from, square peg to square hole, bank to bank. So it's been fascinating to see. I think that's a good summary.
No, it's a fascinating transition. I'm curious, when you look at the folks who, and many of our listeners are in the technology space. So, folks that are working more on the pure technology side of the world, if they're interested in moving over into finance and these types of roles, like, what's the challenge and what's the opportunity?
Well, when you think about the various tech roles, there's different challenges. So if you are a mid to senior level engineer, I think the transition is relatively simple, because your engineering brilliance is what you're bringing. And whether you're writing algorithms for optimization of a supply chain technology, or you're writing algorithms to optimize trading technology, your genius is in your ability to engineer those algos. So I think that's a fairly easy move. When you're talking about leadership roles, like let's say a chief technology officer, Not quite as easy to come into this without some domain experience in either a regulated industry or even better, coming from some experience within a financial services company to then go over to a tech company that is selling back to your former world, bank, brokerage, buy-side institution, something like that.
And curious, as we're moving through the conference, have there been certain topics of conversation that have caught your attention as I think this is going to be important for what I do?
Well, we're hearing a little bit about this thing called AI. So honestly, it reminds me of the late 90s when we were electronifying equities, as I said earlier. So the thinking today is that this is a powerful new resource. It's also for some people threatening resource. And so all of us have to get smarter about what does AI mean? What are the use cases that bring the most value? And how will it change the employment landscape? Do we need less people doing various jobs because AI will do that job? And so these people can hopefully get deployed at a higher order job? We don't know, right? Or will these jobs be eliminated completely? And if so, then what are the ramifications of that?
No, it's such an important point. And when you bring up the move to going electronic in the late 90s, 2000s, and kind of the end of the floor pit traders, the dawn of the electronic traders. Now, how do we see that moving forward? So AI's on the plate. Curious, I think you do some work in succession planning as well. Is that right?
I would say about 1/3 of our work is succession planning for CEOs and probably 2 levels down.
And what's the biggest thing that you think CEOs need to be thinking about with succession? Because it feels like it's a topic that often gets put off thinking about.
Yeah, well, first of all, a CEO transition is a massive shock to a system. And by the way, it's not a black swan. You actually know it's coming. You just may not know whether it's 1 year or 5 years. Hopefully you do. But at the end of the day, it is a huge threat to shareholder value. It is not a black swan, and you can plan for it. So that's number one. Number two, it's not the CEO's job to drive succession. It's the CEO's job to work with the board to drive succession. And ultimately, the board has the responsibility to the shareholders to ensure succession. So CEOs are, let's call it, key leading players in this dance, but they're not necessarily the sole owners of succession. I have a simple philosophy. I wrote a paper on this several years ago called The $40 Trillion Risk. And it says simply, CEO succession is not episodic. If you do leadership development correctly as an ongoing process, CEO succession is a natural evolution of that work. But too many companies wait until the transition of the CEO is imminent, let's say 2 years, and they try to gin up a process that is solely devoted at getting internal candidates prepared to be the possible CEO from the inside, and also mapping who's out there for external choices. That's succession planning 1990. Succession planning today is just a normal extension of a super high-powered leader development program, and that's the way it should be done.
And it seems like with markets, with the industry, with technology forcing change so rapidly these days, companies need to be constantly not just thinking about succession planning, but you said constant people development and keeping up with the demands. And what are the best practices you see on that, on companies, just really keeping their people development in line with the changing landscape? Or what do they need to be doing that they might not be doing?
So great question. We actually, I would argue we own the best intellectual property in the world around just that. We've bought over the last 20 years virtually every top firm that was primarily a boutique firm in this industry, that were pioneering organizational psychology and creating things like success profiles, and leadership architectures and the like. And as a result, we have succession planning processes that integrate all this IP. So at the end of the day, best practice is to assess your talent using psychometrics, assess your talent using 360 feedback, assess your talent using the review of their management, and understand what your people have and where they gap against what would be the best-in-class profile. I would challenge you to say that the majority of companies, sadly still today, do not have that integrated. They do assessment, They think it's cool that they learn something about their person, and then sadly, they don't do enough with it. Why not create a powerful development plan off of what you learned? Why not have that development plan implemented and monitored and measured for progress? It's not rocket science, but sadly, it's not been knit together. So we knit it together. We own it. And I can tell you in the last 12 years, there are 3 CEO transitions that have happened in 3 major institutions that we were involved with. And we have done the last 2 CEO transitions. And by the way, we never stopped. The day the new CEO went on board, we began working on the next generation of CEO using learning development, success profiles, assessment, all of these tools that sadly are not known by boards and CEOs to the extent that they should be.
And the next generation of CEOs might be walking the halls. So I'll let you get back to it. Thanks so much for spending some time with us and walking us through the people that make the markets and make the technology.